Roger, great job while I was gone. Thanks for carrying the burden. What's on your mind today?
Well, and thanks to so many others, Rob Dew, Mike Zimmerman, and who helped in that regard. You know, what's amazing here is that we really see the new journalism, Owen. The days when the mainstream media would dictate a narrative regarding a cataclysmic event like the one we have experienced in Las Vegas, whether it is Oswald acted alone, sole shooter, malcontent communist, for example. What you have today is dozens of well-meaning, open-minded citizen journalists with, instead of just having ZapRudder with one camera, fortunately you have hundreds of people who had their phone cameras, and that gives us evidence. It's becoming very clear to me that the murderous terrorist shooter in Las Vegas, if he is indeed the shootist, certainly a virulent anti-Trumper leftist. We have on Reddit and 4chan been hard at work trying to dig out connections to the radical left, and we have stumbled across videos of a man who looks exactly like Stephen Paddock at different anti-Trump far-left rallies. We can run some of that now to show you what we're talking about. We have a visual problem here, so I'm just working through it. But as you see in one of these videos that we have discovered, a woman calls him Steve, which I think obviously odds are very good this man is Paddock. Meanwhile, we've learned that Paddock wired $100,000 to the Philippines to a woman identified by the Washington Post, pardon me, by the New York Post, as his girlfriend. Her name, Mary Lou Danley. She traveled to Hong Kong on September 25th, was back in her country of origin, the Philippines, October 1st, the fateful day of the massacre. Why was the money sent to the Philippines? What was the nature of Stephen and Mary Lou's relationship? Time will tell us, because Mary Lou is scheduled to return to the United States. At least that's what has been announced. Whether or not that happens remains to be seen. Now, the other thing that is interesting to me here, Owen, is that the New York Post is now reporting that the gunman had an elaborate camera set up to film the entire massacre, and the additional cameras in the hotel hallway to alert him of impending intrusion by the police. It's very odd that a lifelong accountant with no military training and no history of tactical experience was capable of these 007-style moves. The full content of these video recordings that he has made must be completely and totally released, cannot be classified or edited, as it will only fuel the conspiracy theories that we are so dedicated to exposing and discarding here at InfoWars. The New York Times has released a report that says that it took the state police over an hour to breach the hotel room. Now, we have firsthand witnesses telling us that the police presence was immediate, it was strong, they were heavily armed, and they were there almost instantly. So if authorities were there so quickly, we have to ask, why did they have such a difficult time breaching the area where the gunman was allegedly holed up? The Central Florida Post, with whom InfoWars has picked up many of their videos and has featured a lot of discussion about efforts to censor them by the tech left. The Central Florida Post obtained a video of gunfire from the top floors of the Mandalay Bay. They have posted that, which shows dozens dead, others not moving, and the police station on the corner of the street where the concert was being held. The gunfire in this video can be found loud and clear. So the question really is, how does Paddock move from station to station, shooting station as it were, at a time when he has heavy weapons and no known experience? These are just some of my observations, Owen. What are you hearing on the story, perhaps, of the year?
Well, Roger, I think that the greatest point that needs to be made about what you just said is the fact that, yes, we need to get some evidence or some of these questions answered, because, as you said, there's going to be all these rumors swirling, all these conspiracies swirling, and they could easily be confirmed or put to rest with just the release of some information and some evidence. For example, as you mentioned, the police are claiming that they were there quickly and they were able to subdue the shooter rather swiftly. Well, then how was there a 70-minute shooting spree? How about Stephen Paddock being at Trump protests? This is something that can be very easily proven or disproven. You look at travel records, you look at expense records, you look at possibly any alibis. Was anybody with him on those days, or was he truly there? These are things that need to be addressed and need to be answered, and I'm not faulting the Las Vegas Police Department for not answering all questions today. However, these are simple details that I agree with you need to be released to the public as soon as they're discovered, to either quell or confirm some of these conspiracy theories.
Well, hotel security makes no attempt to stop the gunman from the top floor of the Mandalay Bay, as we establish in this video. A woman gave an interview to a reporter claiming another woman was removed from the concert roughly 45 minutes prior to the shooting when she yelled, "Everyone was going to die tonight." So where is this woman? What does she know? Has she been detained? And what do the police know about her? We're also led to believe the gunman stayed for several days at the hotel with dozens of weapons. Yet, even if we were able to conceal those weapons by placing, say, a do not disturb sign on the door, how did he transport this arsenal, weapons, ammunition, equipment, through the hotel and hotel staff and fellow guests through the main lobby without anybody seeing anything? Again, very strange. No history as a gun enthusiast that we can find. No history as a member of any gun organization. Obviously, we are looking into whether the gunman can indeed be tied to Media Matters for America. There is a report out of Washington State that that may be the case. We are seeking confirmation before we go with that here.
So, again, these are all questions that we have that we're just wanting answers on. And these are simple questions that I think should be able to be addressed immediately. I mean, you talk about having all the weapons inside the hotel room, Roger. You know, there's staff that goes in and out of these rooms. They might not have cameras on the floors to see when he goes in and out of his room, but certainly they probably have them on the elevators. Let's get some of these answers. This is the stuff that should be answered pretty quickly and swiftly, but we don't have the answers. We're going to have more with Roger Stone. We're going to get more angles from Roger Stone as well. This is the War Room InfoWars show, and we will be right back after this.
Welcome back to the War Room. I'm Roger Stone with my co-host Owen Scheuer. Last week I testified for the House Intelligence Committee, which is very much like a proctological examination. And of course, in that testimony, there was a great deal of discussion of my limited after-the-fact Twitter exchange with Guccifer 2.0. Now, it is essential to understand that Congressman Adam Schiff and the Democrats continued to insist in that hearing and in the press stand-up afterwards that Guccifer 2.0, like Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, are Russian cutouts, Russian assets. I have rejected that from the beginning. On August 5th, I wrote a piece for Breitbart in which at that point I believed that Guccifer was, in fact, the hacker of the DNC, but I believed that based on a number of characteristics, he was not a Russian asset. In retrospect now, I must say that I don't believe that he is either a Russian or the hacker. An incredible report that I have just received from an IT consultant points out that the fabricated Russian fingerprints exposed in the fakeness of the whole Russian hacking persona of Guccifer 2 suggest an effort to attribute to WikiLeaks preemptively discrediting leaks that would come later. Interestingly enough, Guccifer's use of the word told, tell, say, said, definite and indefinite article use, and command of prepositions expose Guccifer 2.0 as being someone that natively speaks English, not Russian, contrary to what was said inside the hearing. And the terminology and phrasing that has been used consistently shows earmarks of an English speaker. Specious claims about the hackers still being on the network as late as June 12th after installing Falcon, a program across the DNC network, exposed the nature of the Washington Post story on this as a propaganda piece driven by the CrowdStrike DNC statements and their narrative from June 14th, and make it obvious that excuses are being made for emails being dated back as late as May so that leaks could be attributed to a non-existent hack. The fact that there's a month's delay before mentioning the Trump organization, the Trump opposition research file being targeted, and that it wasn't mentioned until after Julian Assange announced the Clinton-related leaks were coming on July 21st. The fact is there's no evidence to support the Guccifer 2.0 claims that the file was being targeted, and the fact that it's unlikely you'd know it was targeted if you couldn't even say who targeted it or exactly why. It suggests that there's an alternative reason for mentioning that file's description, one possibly being a switch or transfer to give credibility to whoever might appear afterwards presenting the very same document. Guccifer 2.0 showed up the very next day using that document, or a tainted copy of one originally authored by Lauren Dillon, as his first document to release, and used it, in my opinion, to lure a gullible media, gullible press, as if the whole thing was planned. Now, Guccifer 2.0, if he really exists, if he is a person or a group of people, fooled giants in the cybersecurity industry, as well as various intelligence agencies, suggesting that Guccifer 2.0 was really someone or some group that were really aligned either with Hillary Clinton or the DNC. Here is an indisputable fact. The software used by Guccifer 2 online is registered to a Democratic National Committee employee named Wilson. The fact that Guccifer 2's hacker persona breach claims were never independently verified, and quite a few would later be debunked, meant that Guccifer 2.0 was probably getting his files, was getting access to these files, which explains why he could only get DNC files and no other high-profile targets, and he produced no Republican files whatsoever. So for someone who bills himself as an extraordinary hacker, we've seen nothing else. The DNC's rejection of the FBI offers to help examine the server and have the tools of the state to aid identify and hacking the hacker are good reason to suspect that the whole thing is not on the up and up. The fact that Falcon was installed on the DNC's network, yet CrowdStrike did not produce details pertaining to the actual exfiltration of email data and instead posted APT group identifiers without context. For you gearheads out there, it shows the whole thing is a fraud. Lastly, Guccifer appears to have had physical LAN access while collating certain files. Folks, I've come to the conclusion that my column of the 5th is incorrect, and that he is not the hacker. In fact, as I said to the House committee, I now doubt whether there is any hacking at the DNC. As we know, a group of intelligence veterans have come forward, including William Binney, Ray McGovern, and others, and the science tends to indicate that there was a portable device utilized. The data was downloaded to a thumb drive and most likely spirited out the back door. Nonetheless, my critics got what they wanted, the headline that says, Stone admits communication with Russian asset, even though I don't concede that he, Guccifer, or whatever he is a Russian asset, and the fact that the context, content, and timing of our exchange is entirely benign. So there is the download on Guccifer 2.0, Owen. There's a lot of information there. Bottom line, not a Russian, as I told the House committee.
Well, and they want to continue to make something of this. They've been investigating this for months. They made false accusations to you. They made false accusations towards InfoWars. No evidence and a lot of conclusions being reached here. Yet we can't even get any seemingly investigation of this type of interest into the Las Vegas shooter, yet they seem to already have concluded who it was and exactly how it happened. So it's amazing to kind of contrast how they've done these investigations and how they've treated these two separate events, and where they're obviously devoting their focus and their attention, and why would it be there? Why would they want to go after Roger Stone?
Well, you know, I think the jury's still out on Las Vegas. Let's see what kind of a job the mainstream media does as the story starts to unravel. But nowhere will you find better cutting-edge coverage. No one will you find citizen journalists who have stepped forward that is better than the coverage here at InfoWars. There's never been a time when I have been prouder to be on this team, because we are open-minded, we are examining every aspect of this, and we are committed only to the truth, not a political agenda, but the truth. The mainstream media cannot say that. If you haven't hit the Infowars.com store, now's an excellent time. I would not be able to do this, believe me, without Brain Force. Now 50% off. Grab it. This is a great product, folks. Help yourself, help us, help the revolution.
Infowarsstore.com. That's Roger Stone. This is The War Room. I'm Owen Schroyer. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
I'm Roger Stone with my colleague Owen Schroyer, and now one of my favorite patriots, Colonel Mike McAllister from the grassroots organization Citizens for Trump, joins us here on the War Room. I promoted you. Colonel McAllister has served his country with distinction. He is a great pal of mine, a great patriot, and a great activist. Colonel, thanks for joining us here at the War Room.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Roger, and it's always a privilege and an honor to be a part of your show and to have an opportunity to reach out to your patriot listeners who certainly are playing a major role in this fight to save America.
Well, I am a big supporter and cheerleader for Citizens for Trump, which is a true grassroots organization that grew naturally out of the presidential election, has remained in place to support the president's agenda, to support the president's policies, and to support men and women who will support the reform agenda. But you've been doing very important work on the whole question of the NFL. Now, this, to me, shows the extent to which Donald Trump is a genius. He's a public relations genius. He's a political genius. He has seized a patriotic fervor here in this issue that the elites on both coasts, they can poo-poo all they want. I think middle America is with the president. But tell us what you've been doing.
Well, you make a great point, Roger, and the president is absolutely sensing the American patriots' frustration and anger at the NFL. So what we did on Saturday at Citizens for Trump, and as you know, I'm the national spokesman for them, we got together a patriot group and military veterans of all services, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, the leaders of patriot biker groups and other patriot groups and Tea Party groups, and we live streamed from in front of an NFL stadium here in Tampa to send a loud and clear message, not just to the players, but straight to the owners and the league. And we wanted the owners to clearly understand that we're watching what's going on. We're not liking it. The Star-Spangled Banner is the national anthem of this country, and to disrespect its playing is disrespecting both those who served in uniform when they stand at attention and salute, but also disrespects the proud, brave men and women in law enforcement who are right there on the field with them at the same time, who are standing at attention and saluting. And this is just simply not going over well with anyone. And we wanted to send that message loud and clear.
You know, the dichotomy between the liberal elites and the hardworking middle-class taxpayers of this country, the gulf is larger than anything I have ever seen. The misreading of this issue initially by some in the media was extraordinary. But as I have traveled in South Florida and earlier in the week outside Washington, D.C., I found that most people I talked to were revolted by the fact that anyone would disrespect our flag, disrespect our national anthem, would reject our heritage. People think this has now gone too far. I think the president will sustain political advantages, even though I don't think that was the purpose for him raising this. I think the culture war is now with us. And I think the president has been great in his refusal to back down from withering criticism. The other thing, of course, that was very predictable is the fact that some would take advantage of the horrific tragedy in Las Vegas to renew their call to seize and take our firearms in violation of the U.S. Constitution and the law. The gun grabbers seem to be, in high dudgeon. Colonel McAllister, you have a lot of experience. Tell us your assessment of what happened in Las Vegas and give us some analysis, if you would.
Well, I think we all know, Roger, and the president said it quite eloquently in a statement that he made, but that this was a horrendous tragedy. And it's not a matter that, we always have the left that try to use every opportunity like this to enforce stronger gun control, and yet we look at some cities in our nation that has some of the most strict gun control, and yet they still have some of the worst crime rates, even with crimes committed with the use of guns. And I think also when we look at this, and what is the tone he sent to America was of gratitude and respect for our courageous first responders who put themselves in harm's way, and he extended words of comfort and prayer for the lost loved ones and the grieving families, and once again our nation in shock. And he gave words of inspiration and hope for America. Call upon our bonds that unite us, our commonalities, our faith, our family, our shared values, our bonds of citizenship. And these are the ties of community and comfort of our common humanity. And he did call this the worst mass shooting in U.S. history and an act of pure evil. And he told our nation that our unity cannot be shattered by this. Our bonds cannot be broken by violence. And that we will get through this senseless slaughter in a way that redefines our country and who we are. And in the same time, we're consoling those who lost loved ones and lost friends. And, and the press secretary, Sarah Sanders, she was, you could see the emotion in her when she paid the tribute to the American heroes who stepped in to save the others, our law enforcement and our Blue Lives men and women. And sadly, multiple police officers, and she stated, sadly, multiple police officers, both on duty and off duty, were among those killed or injured. But what these people did for each other says far more about who we are as Americans than the cowardly acts of a killer ever could. So I think, Roger, these things are separate issues, but yet there are some common threads here. And it seems like what we keep having to remind people, and we shouldn't have to, but our military veterans who wear a uniform and an American flag on that uniform, we need to respect them, and the NFL players who wear an NFL logo need to respect that flag on that uniform, and our proud and brave law enforcement men and women, the men and women in blue. The blue lives do matter, and the president and many of us are doing what we can, and we need, and we will do more to make sure that everyone knows these are American heroes too, and these are the good guys, and we have to be on their side supporting them and never letting that slip away.
Always articulate, Colonel Mike McAllister. I note that Citizens for Trump recently endorsed challenger Omar Navarro running against Maxine Waters, an Owen Schroyer find, one of the really outstanding, hard-charging young conservatives. I understand the endorsement of Carla Spalding is in the offing in Florida, challenging Deborah Wasserman Schultz. So I salute the good work that you're doing, Colonel McAllister, and I hope you'll come back on the War Room soon.
Thank you much, Roger, and the work you're doing and on the show and InfoWars, and again, your listeners. You know, the role they play is so critical to the future of our country. Thanks again.
Many thanks for joining us. Owen, you want to wrap this segment up?
Absolutely, Roger. We got to win Congress in 2018, and that's by the listeners of this show, the good Americans out there getting interested in local politics and making sure we make Congress great again in 2018. That is up to us. We'll be right back with Roger Stone and more of the War Room. I've got some new interesting updates on this shooting in Las Vegas that I want to cover. We'll talk about that in the remainder of the War Room here till 6 o'clock Central. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back. I'm Roger Stone, and you're at the right place. That's right. You're at the War Room, our new programming to help bring you the very latest and inside scoop, whether it is the machinations in the Trump White House, the latest developments out of Las Vegas, or the attempts by the tech left to kneecap us through censorship. We bring you the story here. Owen, you have an update from Las Vegas. Why don't you tell us what you know?
So we've got some new interesting stories that are coming out now. One story is the Las Vegas gunman filmed himself during the slaughter. So we already knew that he was filming the hallway, supposedly in an attempt to alert himself as to when the police were approaching or security would be approaching. And there's also new allegations that he left a note. Okay, so those are two things that, again, should be very easily made public information. I don't know why they would need to withhold any of that. Obviously, the video would be pretty sensitive, but yet that would be some pretty important stuff to make a case, as well as any note. And then you've also got a story of Paddock in 2011 suing a casino after he slipped and fell, lost that lawsuit, and apparently still owes $270 in court fees. So what's that about? That, again, just another strange development, and I don't think we'll ever get any answers to any of these things, to be honest with you, Roger, at least the way that they've handled these things in the past. And as you said earlier, this is just going to continue to add fuel to the flame of any conspiracy theories that are lingering out there. Now, I've got another story here from UK story, the Courier Mail, that has multiple eyewitness reports saying multiple shooters, including a man of interest at the Luxor Hotel. So just continued developments here. But the story, Roger, of course, as you're well aware, the immediate politicization of this by the left before the bodies were cold, before the blood was dried. And if this turns out to be a leftist shooter or leftist motivated, they're going to have total egg on their face.
Well, we know who shot a Republican congressman while he was trying to prepare for a charity basketball game. The violence has been on the left. The Central Florida Post has a source that reports Antifa literature in the hotel room. They will be posting that, they tell me, shortly. I know their journalistic standards there at the Central Florida Post, and I know they are, like we here at InfoWars, committed to the truth and nothing but the truth. We're open-minded. The left will move very quickly to shape this narrative around an effort to grab our guns, to say that, oh, maybe this guy was motivated by workplace violence. We've heard that one before. This guy is a lunatic. These photos are deeply disturbing. This video is just horrific. I had trouble turning off that popping sound in my mind after I turned out the lights last night. But let's be very clear. This cannot be used as an effort to end our ability to arm ourselves in the case of national emergency as guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution. You already see the two members of the U.S. Senate from Connecticut out beating the drum to grab our guns. And it is what feeds people's skepticism about what exactly happened, how many shooters, how can so many of these technical questions be answered. The more experienced people I talk to, for example, it turns out that Paddock appears to have purchased all of his guns legally, and it now appears that he achieved the automatic rifle effect through the use of a bump stock. Now, the bump stock is a device that uses the recoil of the firing gun to cause the trigger housing to move against the shooter's depressed finger until, of course, the finger is removed or the ammo is exhausted. Experienced shooters will realize that using such a device is notoriously inaccurate, destroys the accuracy of the firearm. So one has to ask, how did the shooter, the killer, have such a high hit rate? Why was he as accurate as he was? Such motion due to recoil usually makes the optics found on the weapon completely worthless, and this question of accuracy comes to the fore. Those who think that this will be successfully used by the left to take away our guns, well, they have another thing coming. Owen?
Yeah, and my problem with this, Roger, is they want to have this gun debate, but if we're going to have this debate, which, okay, fine, we'll have the debate. Obviously, you know where InfoWars stand. You know where I stand. You know where Roger stands. That's why I wore my Moan Labe pin today to make a statement. But if the left is going to have this debate, we should at least know the facts. That's my biggest problem. Was this really one shooter, or were there multiple shooters? If we're going to have this debate without all of the information and without all of the facts, then we're not truly having a debate. We're having a political attack on our Constitution.
Well, keep an eye on CNN. Keep an eye on the big three networks. Let's see what the morning line is compared to some of the investigative journalists out there who still have an open mind. Again, you're going to find the very best coverage here at Infowars.com, because Alex Jones and the entire crew here is committed to truth. We're not committed to trying to make an agenda fit the facts. We want to know what the facts are and see if they fit a logical agenda, which I think they will. The more we learn, I think the more we are going to find that ties this shooter to an anti-Trump constituency there in Las Vegas. I will be updating throughout the evening as I get more reports from the Central Florida Post. You can go to centralfloridapost.com and see some of their extraordinary videos. I've asked them to send those to InfoWars, and they should be headed our way. You can see a shooter from the top floor. We also have these videos of the alleged shooter attending an anti-Trump event where he is addressed by his first name, Stephen. I'm not sure what else we need to begin to identify where the shooter stands on the ideological spectrum.
And just, again, to clarify these points, the left wants to blame the right. We've already seen them blaming the NRA, blaming Republicans, when it looks like it might turn out that this shooter was an ardent leftist. So, again, more egg on the face. There's an entire compilation of liberal media on Grabian.com right now. Immediately after the shooting, all of the liberal media blaming Republicans, blaming the GOP, blaming conservatives, blaming the NRA. Oh, it turns out it was a leftist. I wonder if they'll end up reporting that. And then the left will say, look at what one shooter can do with a gun. Blame one shooter. This is what one guy can do with the gun. Well, wait a second. Let's find out if that's true. We have reports that there may have been multiple shooters, including eyewitnesses at the scene. So I'm sick of the left not even I enjoy political discourse. Roger enjoys political discourse. However, the left does not have real political discourse because their discourse is not based in reality.
Well, their discourse is based in their effort to censor you and shut you up or shout you down. You know, Rob Dew said something yesterday that kind of took me back a number of years. If guns are outlawed, only outlaws will have guns. It's really pretty simple. The naive idea that if we could just take guns away from people, that all would be sweetness and light. There'd be no violence. There'd be no crime. There'd be no gun deaths. This is a Pollyanna. This is not realistic in the real world. But the left has to push this narrative because they cannot have us own our guns during the takedown that they have planned for Donald J. Trump in the impending Mueller-fueled coup d'etat. That's why I think they are getting frantic in their efforts to crack down on American gun owners.
Excellent, fresh angle as always, Roger. Glad to be speaking with you again, back from vacation. Glad to be back with you, Roger.
Great to be with you here on The War Room. We got a lot of great stuff coming up, and I'm enjoying immensely putting these shows together and extending our programming at InfoWars.
That's Roger Stone. He's on The War Room every day. We've got more updates. And, oh, by the way, as to what Roger was talking about earlier, the bump stock, when the LVPD, the Las Vegas Police Department, was asked about that today in the press conference, they refused to answer. They said the ATF is looking into that right now. So we'll continue to monitor that as it develops.